Everyone that is in the live, go ahead and give me a yes or a thumbs up just to make sure my audio is good and we're good to go. But once again, thank everybody for being here. I know there has been a lot going on for the month of January. We're in February right now, so this is the month of love. So I'm excited for everybody to just hear everybody's perspective and just have a great conversation, as I said earlier. Thank you, Miss Nikki. I appreciate that, knowing that my audio is good. Let me go ahead and make sure I turn off my notifications. So give me 1 second. Okay. So right now we are waiting on some of the candidates to come in. We do have a jam-packed lineup. So be on the lookout for that. We're just trying to get all the candidates in. So let me go ahead and bring some of them up this far. I see some of them in the chat. Go ahead and tap that screen. Right now we have about 631 people thus far. Let's see if we can get past 1K in the next 2 minutes. Hello, Miss Shavonne. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic. How are you doing? Would you like me to put the background on and stuff?
Yes, if it's up to you. If you would like to, but it'll be great.
Okay, let me.
And we're waiting on some other candidates to come in so we can line everyone up on the panel.
I'll just blur it out in the background.
Okay, no problem. All right. Hello, Misty. How are you? Thank you all for the gifts. I appreciate their support. Okay. So we're waiting on everyone that's listening. We're just waiting on a few more candidates to come on before we get started. While you're here, go ahead and do your due diligence, which is to go ahead and tap the screen, share the live out to anyone who would love to have this great conversation. Be sure to share it to your stories and also repost it. That way, everyone that is following you, knowing that you are in this conversation, engaging, and if they would like to come in, that would be great. Hello, Justin. How are you?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you really well.
Great.
We're waiting on some more candidates to come up before we get started. But I'm sorry, did you?
I'm sorry. Let me just get this right really quickly. Hold on.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Thank you all for reposting. I see you all reposting thus far. Thank you all for liking the live, sharing the live. We did go ahead and get past 1K. Thank you all for the engagement. Let's continue to power tap as much as you can. That way we can get out on the FYP as quick as possible. Okay, thank you, NAH, for reposting. Thank you, Ayana, for reposting. Thank you all. So, let's see. Yes, I can see you, Justin. I think you're trying to put.
I was just trying to share it. I was just trying to share it on my
okay.
on mine too.
Okay, and it's optional. You don't have to put up your background if you want to. As long as you have your camera on, it'll be great. Okay, thank you all. We have about 1.5K likes. Let's see if we can get to 5K before we get started. We'll give a grace period for about 5 minutes before we let all the candidates know that we're here. Thus far, we have 2 that's on the panel. We've sent invites to about 4 other candidates that have accepted the invitation, so we're just waiting. If we don't have everyone here, that's fine. They can come in whenever they can, but we'll give it another few more minutes before we get started. So, Justin, how is the campaigning going thus far?
It's going good. Busy. Lots of events, and our campaign alone has done like 5 town halls that we've actually organized across the district. Okay. And Pennsylvania's 10th district is pretty large, so it encompasses 3 different counties. So we've had one in each county, and continuing to look at other. Now there's a lot of external groups planning forums and debates and town halls, and so we're doing those as well. It's been busy, but really, really good.
That's good. That's good. And the fundraising has been going pretty good as well.
Yeah, we're just shy of 4,000 donors, so we're really excited about that. Very grassroots. We're not taking any corporate PAC money, and our average gift, I think, is just over $22. So
that's amazing.
We're pretty excited about that. It's taken a lot of work, and when we hit 4,000 here, we're going to celebrate it just because we think it's pretty critical that we're relying on people, not corporations, and trying to emphasize the difference between that and other candidates.
That's great. That's great. Hi, Mr. Terry. How are you? Are you able to turn on your camera?
No, I'm driving. I'm like 5 minutes from home, and then I got to get connected to the Wi-Fi there, but then I'll come back in.
Okay, no problem. Take your time. Whenever you do get settled, feel free to, turn on your camera. But glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Hello, Max. How are you?
Hey, doing good.
Doing good. Okay, that's great. All right. We almost have everyone up here. I'm going to give it another minute or 2 before we get started. We do have we have 2 more people that we've sent invitations and accepted. So we'll still be waiting on them, but if not, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll just give it another minute. And mods, if you see anyone in the guest queue that we have invited up, feel free to bring them up. If I miss them, I'm okay with you bringing them up if they're in the queue, the other 2 candidates. Okay. Y'all looking good so far being on camera. We're just going to give it another few more seconds before we get started. And thank you all for the gifts thus far. And thank you all who have been waiting patiently before we start. I think this is going to be great. Looking forward to it. And we almost at 2K likes. So let's see. Once we hit 2K, we'll go ahead and get started. Ayana, that's fine. We have another box if she wants to join. Okay. We have about 2K. Thank you all for hitting the like button. We have hit 2K. All right. So, welcome everybody in. I'm glad you're here today. This is our Vote Counts Candidate Roundtable. I am your moderator, Jazz B. Flower. So for those who are not familiar with our Vote Counts, we are a nonpartisan coalition of citizens from diverse states and backgrounds, united by a shared commitment to empowering voters and promoting candidates who stand for integrity, inclusion, and accountability in the upcoming elections. Formed by a collective of educators, veterans, small business owners, students, and community advocates, our Vote Count stories are different. Our mission is the same, though, to ensure that every voice is heard and every vote truly counts. Our Vote Counts is more than just a name. It's a promise, a movement, and it's a rallying cry for our democracy. So together, we're shaping the future one vote at a time. So with this special roundtable that we have candidates who are running for the U.S. House of Representatives, particularly Congress from across the country, which are bringing them together in one space so that you can hear their ideas directly, which you can compare their perspectives and ask the questions that matter to you. So with this roundtable, we want to get clarity and accessibility and have a real conversation. So this is how it works. I'll guide the discussion with policy questions or just topics. We'll shift back and forth amongst the candidates. And then we'll give everybody equal time to speak and respond. That way it stays fair and focused. So as we know, TikTok, you are a part of the show. So you can drop your thoughts in the chat and then send your questions as they go. I'll pick some out in the comments and let the candidates know how you're feeling. And also, if you're just joining, hit the screen, share the live, and let people know that we're having a real conversation. So welcome everybody that's on the panel. I would like for y'all to go one by one and introduce yourselves and let everybody know what you're running for. And if you want to just briefly share anything else before we get started. So I'll go with Miss Shavonne.
Oh, fun times. Hi. Happy Sunday, everyone. My name is Shavonne Hedgepeth. I'm running to fight for Maryland's 4th congressional district. And my platform is predominantly centered around implementation and ensuring that community funding reaches our constituents on the ground.
Okay. Justin, if you'd like to go next, feel free.
Yeah, my name's Justin Douglas. I'm running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 10th district. The current person holding that seat is Scott Perry. It includes Harrisburg, Hershey, York, Carlisle. So right there in the center of the state, the capital city. I'm running specifically on the realities of billionaires owning elections and the reality that we have to curb that. We have to stop that. We have to send people there who get there the right way. Grassroots funding, ultimately, so that they're listening to the people and not beholden to the corporations. Medicare for all, and abolish ICE as well.
All right, Colin.
Hi, I'm Colin McRoberts, running in Kansas's 1st congressional district. We represent central Kansas all the way out to western Kansas, one of the largest geographical districts in the country, and right now I'm up in the very far west. I'm running against the incumbent Tracy Mann, and I'm running on a platform of accountability for federal officials for incompetence, for rights violations, and for clearly everything that's happening right now in Minneapolis, but then also running for affordability and progress, returning scientific research and education back to standard levels.
Okay, Max.
Hey, my name is Max Diaz. Thanks for having me back on. I really enjoyed it last time. I'm running in South Carolina's 1st congressional district that pretty much runs up and down the coast, most of the coast of South Carolina. And what I'm running on is essentially the idea that our government, our society, should be structured and organized around taking care of the needs of the people, of the plurality of people, the workers, the average person. Also, just taking care of practical problems, things that have been kind of put by the wayside for many years, like climate change, like rising housing costs, things that affect people on the everyday.
Hi, Randy. You would like to introduce everyone, just let everyone know who you are and what you're running for. If you want to just briefly make a statement, feel free.
Absolutely. I'm Randi White. I'm on the other side of Maryland, Maryland's 1st district, running as a Democrat and hopefully hoping to take on Andy Harris. This is a district that everybody's in a hullabaloo about, but it is winnable. I'm homegrown here on the Eastern Shore, running on healthcare access, education, and the cost of living, and so much more. So I'm happy to be here and happy to see everyone here too.
All right. Thank you all for those introductions. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first topic for today regarding current events is the current government shutdown. As everybody knows that the deadline was 2 days ago, which was January 30th, for them to fully fund the government. But unfortunately, they couldn't come to a consensus. So therefore, there is a partial shutdown. So for those who are not familiar with the partial shutdown, it essentially affects places in the government such as the TSA, which is the Airport Security, Customs and Border Protection, FEMA, the Coast Guard, and parts of immigration courts and processing systems. So just want to get you all's perspective. So my first question to you all is, what are your thoughts on that? And how would you approach the funding standoff? And do you feel like the responsibility to prevent the shutdowns is necessary to hold firm with your priorities? So I'll go with Ms. Shavonne first on that.
Yes. So there are a lot of implications when the government shuts down or has a partial shutdown. Community funding no longer can be allocated because the Appropriations Committee can no longer meet. So those communities that are most impacted by the projects that are being submitted, especially our elderly citizens, our schools, our Boys and Girls Clubs, like any project that is submitted by any congressperson across America will no longer receive funding for the entire fiscal year. So that means that the needs that are trying to be addressed under the guise of that earmarked community funding will now roll over and be compounded by the traditional concerns. Now, because the hot topic is around ICE funding. I think that in the event of a shutdown, it is incumbent upon the person in that seat to ensure that the people most impacted by the shutdown will have the resources they need to make it through that, to make it through the experience. So it is a dual-sided concern, right? There's also the impact of wanting to prevent the shutdown, but what do we do in the inevitability of that shutdown, and making sure the strategy is in line with protecting the people.
All right, Ms. Randi, what are your thoughts?
So Ms. Shavonne has it all right. One of the things I want everyone to keep in mind of is how we end up here, right? We always want to make sure we keep like the source, and not for political reasons, but because we want those same people who are willing to not do what's for the people, do the right thing for the people. We want to make sure we don't allow those same people in office again, because those are the reasons. When we had our first shutdown, yeah, it was like we were withholding because we wanted better healthcare. But the reason we were in the shutdown was because a whole party said, we don't want people to have affordable health care. We don't want to take care of our people. And that kind of continued on. And that's why we had the longest shutdown for the second time, with the same president and the same party in power. We also want to look at what it is yesterday, what happened yesterday. We had one person hold everything up because he didn't want anybody to see his phone records, and he wanted compensation, like we're talking about mesothelioma or something like that. He wanted compensation for being investigated. These are the reason why the why is important, is because they don't care about the people. It's about themselves, and we want to make sure that we don't keep these type of people in office. We got to keep working hard for the people. The Senate did a good job trying to get the deal and pulling DHS away from everything. Perfect. That was awesome. But we need to keep people that are consistently about helping the common man, woman, non-binary, that's actually working their butt off every single day.
All right, Mr. Justin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think where we're at right now is we have an agency that's barely 21 years old, and they're drunk with power. And I think what we're trying to use is the levers of the fiscal realities of billions of dollars being, funneled to that agency, for the purposes now of clearly executing American citizens in the street. And, I think if, shutting the government down has consequences, and they're incredibly negative consequences on certain people. And at the same time, the idea of standing by and doing nothing, which unfortunately is often what Democrats have done when they're in the minority, to me is not an option when this is the kind of, authoritarian leadership we're dealing with. And I don't say that lightly. Like, I think we are at an inflection point, and pulling on every lever we have is really important. And I think what we get, the compromise we're able to find, it's not going to be to stop everything, but if it can be to make it harder, if it can be to unmask ICE officials, if it can be, if there's a way we can get a win out of this, even if it still doesn't change everything, I want to see us do that. I want to see us try. I want to see us pull on every lever we have at our disposal. And so I think that's what's happening right now. We'll see if it's a couple weeks or, much longer. But then we obviously have the reality of, as Ms. mentioned prior, that one of the motives here is simply and purely selfish, of not wanting to be compensated for the January 6th investigation, where, phone records were pulled to see, which one of our individuals that we've elected are traitors. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just insane that someone wants to compensation for that. But at the same time, the president's suing the IRS. They're trying to, it's a grift, and it's affecting the American people. And I think our elected leaders should stand up to that and use every option that they have. And this is, I think, one of those tools.
All right, Mr. Max?
Yeah, so kind of going off of what Randi said and a little bit of what Justin said, is when it comes to the broader issue of these shutdowns, and that includes both this one and the last one, is they've tended to happen when there's a push to do something that will harm the average American. And one side doesn't want to play along with that, and the other side will use the shutdown as ammunition for them to say, well, you're halting the gears of government. If you just let us do whatever we want, then this harm wouldn't be occurring. If you weren't so mean as to stop our plans, no one would be in pain. And there comes a point where you do have to use whatever resources are at your disposal. You can't just go along with every immoral or unethical plan because it'll end up in a shutdown or some other sort of situation. Because at the end of the day, you can't just allow those things to happen. You do have to fight back. So in the case of healthcare, I mean, the option was to just allow the cuts to healthcare or stall the process out. Neither one is really acceptable to anyone with, with the good of the people at heart. So the only option in my mind is to fight and try and put, as obviously as possible, the blame for that on the people who are responsible, which are the ones who ultimately want to do the harm.
All right, Mr. Colin?
I don't disagree with Max, but I kind of disagree with Max. And the problem here is, and I come at this from the perspective of a negotiator because that's my job before I went into politics, a professor of negotiation expert. You can talk about whose fault it is, but we got to figure out who could be responsible for it and do something about it. And we can't ask the Republican Party to be responsible and do something about it because we're here because they won't. We've got to ask Democratic leadership to stand up, particularly because the very first thing you said as the moderator was pointing out how expensive the shutdown is and who that cost falls on. It doesn't fall on the people who are responsible for it. It falls on the people who are least able to bear it. So we have a responsibility, therefore, to make sure the shutdown is effective. And if we can't make the shutdown effective, we can't shut it down. It's got to be something that delivers results. The best way to do that would be stronger Dem leadership, which is a long-term project. No easy answers here, but one that sets out a clear answer to, and when does the shutdown end? When does it start? When does it end? So we need some solid metric for what is the level of violence that's acceptable, 0, in these enforcement proceedings. And then how do we know that it's acceptable to now fund? We need that kind of clear statement to communicate to the people so they understand as they're being asked to sacrifice in the shutdown, why that sacrifice is necessary and when it ends. And without that, I'm not sure we can shut down. I think we could do that. We just have to start setting that expectation for Democratic leadership because, again, we can't put it in the people who really should bear that responsibility, which is the party I'm controlling now.
All right. Mr. Terry, I know you dropped off briefly, but let me know if you want me to reiterate the question. But this is regarding your thoughts about the shutdown, the actual partial shutdown. So just want to know your thoughts on if you want to piggyback off anyone who spoke previously. Or you can just give me your thoughts as well.
I think everyone has hit on some major points of it. But personally, as a former federal employee myself, my wife is a federal employee. I live in the district with the most federal employees. We have 75,000 plus here in Maryland District 5. And, it affects everyone. It affects individual households. It affects the economy overall in the district, and which affects the state in its entirety. And government shutdowns are just essentially the government being weaponized against the citizens in that form. That's essentially what's happening when we have government shutdowns. Now, typically, if you look back at government shutdowns, even as far back as Obama or even further than that, every time we have a government shutdown, it's for one of two reasons. Either the Republicans are trying to pass something that is bad for the country and only benefits a small fraction of the country, or, they want to have something, they're against something that the Democrats are trying to do. And typically they're in the minority when they do that. But we don't have enough votes in either chamber to actually get the legislation passed. And, given the previous shutdown, it was 40 plus days, and the current one that we're in right now and may end up being in now since the House's minority leader has come out and said that he may not support it. I think right now what we're doing is we're trying to prevent harm. And I fully support preventing more harm because given the last year that the American people have dealt with, harm has been coming steady and fast every single day. There's always another shoe dropping from the White House that negatively affects the American people. And, first, At the end of the year, it was protecting the ACA, protecting healthcare, getting those subsidies locked in. Now we are seeing people being taken off the streets and locked away just because of their immigration status or whether they're American citizens. They're being targeted in the streets. So as a Democrat and as a member of the Democratic Party, we have to take a stand. And from what I've seen, even being part of the voter base myself, the American people who are on the right side of these issues are willing to take the pain. They are willing to make the sacrifice. And a lot of us are angry with our current leaders right now because they are not willing to be bold. And there are two things that are missing in Congress overall, which I feel like a lot of the grassroots candidates like myself that are running, I feel like we have the willingness and we have the courage. And those are two things that Congress is desperately missing: a willingness to act and the courage to do so. And if we can get grassroots candidates in Congress that are willing to do those two things, I feel like we can move mountains and we can really change this country and move it forward.
All right, appreciate that. And I think we're going to definitely touch on the recent tragedies of 2 American citizens by the hands of ICE. But I want to go ahead and couple what you just touched on, Mr. Terry, regarding that into the funding part of DHS. Should the funding bill be tied to immigration reforms and handling, or should the bill be handled separately? Anybody can pick up on this. I don't have to go into the order. So if anybody wants to jump in to talk about what I just mentioned, let me know. So I just want to know your thoughts about, should it be a separate bill or should it be coupled in to the funding of VHS?
I'll just say this. I'll just say this. Last time the government was shut down, nothing functionally changed. Like, the ACA credits were still lost, right? But one thing that did change, which I think was a win, was that it framed for the American people that their healthcare benefits were being taken away in that way. And I think one of the things we've not done well in defending against this particular administration is winning the attention economy and the information, like facts economy. I think had we not done that and shut down the way we did, I don't know that the American people would be as informed about what the consequences of the big, beautiful bill were. And so I guess there also has to be some strategies here around messaging. And I do think right now the salient point is immigration. And so I would be for us messaging it around that.
Yeah, if I can jump in after Justin, he's absolutely right with the messaging finally worked in our way. Like, people were paying attention because this was a real thing. And anybody who's on social, I know I did like a whole thing on ACA, right? The numbers ended up being worse than what like we predicted and calculated and everything else. And this was real, so real, in fact, that 17 Republicans voted in the House to move forward with like that 3-year extension, thanks to Lauren Underwood. And unfortunately, the Senate stalled it. So it's in our favor because people are feeling it. And that's everything. And I believe with what's going on, like what happened in Minnesota, just really quick, it's a direct correlation from, like, I can take you from what happened to Breonna Taylor and them not being held accountable for shooting a woman in her home who didn't do anything, letting that go, and to the point where we have 3 dead since, New Year's Eve, because we don't want to forget about Keith Porter Jr. 2, like Keith Porter Jr., Renee Good, and Alex Reddy, right? So we need to pull away the immigration from the bill. That was a smart thing for the Senate to do, because after 2 weeks, they don't have that anymore. That gets completely defunded, if we want to use that word. It gets completely defunded, and that's at the hands of Republicans, right? They didn't take care of your people. If you believe in it enough, go ahead and do whatever. So it puts a challenge onto the Republicans to stand. You have to stand in front of everybody and take up for what we've been seeing go on in the streets. So you have to take that stand. What we really need in immigration reform is the bureaucracy, and everything else. ICE, as we know it, has to go. we can have immigration like policies and oversight and all that other stuff. But as it stands today, that all gotta go.
Okay, Max, I saw you had your hand up.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Shavonne. Sorry.
no, please, Max.
Oh, okay. Let me get Max in, and then I'll bring in Shavonne. Max.
Okay.
Okay, I was gonna go ahead and on the topic of separating that from the bill, just as a thought, in any functional, prudent government, the right move would generally to always be to separate something highly contentious from a necessary funding bill. So that's just kind of my view on what should happen. Not that we really live in that reality. But I also wanted to say in a little bit in regards, because we kind of came back a little bit to the shutdown, is that I think sort of going the route of, because we talked about how eventually those 17 Republicans conceded. They understand how it hurt them, it hurt their careers, it hurt their electability, and they gave in because we put so much attention on the subject through the shutdown that the American people broadly began to understand that if this policy goes through and it's being pushed by a certain party and certain representatives and senators, it's going to directly harm the American people. So that's why I don't so much fall in the always prevent the shutdown sort of concessionist camp, because if you use your voice right and you work the media right and you talk to the people and inform them as much as possible, you can make them understand where the root cause lies and who's really doing this, because it's one party saying you're gonna let us hurt the American people, or we're gonna try and make it look like you're hurting the American people.
All right, Shavonne.
I'm off mute for like 2 seconds. Let me back up a little bit. But so I did want to kind of synthesize some of the comments that the panel, there are really great comments, right? But I think the largest concern is strategy, right? And then that strategy has to be coupled with communication. And so shutdowns, unfortunately, are a bargaining chip for passing the necessary legislation when we do run into those bottlenecks with the opposing side of the idea, right? But I think it's important to note that within that strategy of requiring the shutdown, there needs to be effective mobilization for the people that are impacted, right? Like we can communicate, but if we aren't communicating and still trying to close those gaps of how those other people's lives are going to be impacted by this highly level strategic decision, because the role of a congressperson or a House of Rep, I'll say that, right? Most congress people, you're managing your district needs as well as national needs. So while the long run of the strategy is to impact people nationally, there are going to be people who we're bartering with on a day-to-day basis. And considering the specific needs of the constituents that you're guarding, your strategy has to reflect that. So in District 4, we struggle with food insecurity inside the Beltway. So during that shutdown, there were massive attempts at trying to close those gaps for the people who are currently food insecure, and then now the most recently laid off federal workers that were food insecure. Like Maryland had 25,000 federal jobs lost. It was the largest of any state, right? So our stakes are variously higher than some of the other national actors who are going to be impacted by a shutdown. So if the shutdown is the option to remedying the problem, then we also have to have solutions in place, understanding that a lot of those nonprofit organizations and the key players on the ground are going to be resource constrained when they're overwhelmed by the needs within that specific district. So we can have a strategy and comms around the impact and why we're trying to do it, but the harm will still exist behind the words. So the strategies on the ground still need to be in protection of the people.
All right, Colin, did you want to piggyback off of what Ms. Shavonne just spoke about?
Yeah, Shavonne is right. I mean, I think one of the ways to mitigate those harms is to tie any necessary measures to end the shutdown to as specific and as limited policy goals as possible, because it's such a heavy hammer to use on a problem. If we focus it on the very smallest nail that we can actually accomplish, it does a lot more. And if we say it has to be immigration reform, that's a large multi-year process. It's not a realistic target for something as serious as a shutdown. But if we're really focused on, for example, the violence incumbent in enforcement, Now we can start to say, well, here's a specific measure that will address that violence. So something I've been running on is a reform of Section 1983 that would hold federal agents to the same standards as local cops and allow victims of civil rights violations to sue in civil courts, which the administration can't interfere with the same way they've interfered with federal investigations. That's a relatively simple legal change. It's a one-sentence amendment to an existing law that's been in force for 150 years, just never applied to the federal government. I think that we could say the shutdown ends when this amendment is passed, and we can make some real progress on ending the violence by ICE. Immigration reform is definitely a goal. I don't think anybody here would disagree with that. I don't think anybody in either party would disagree with that. But it doesn't get there through a shutdown. That's just one step along the way. Although, to go back to what I said earlier, certainly raising the issue, like Terry was saying, that makes a huge difference also. So just as we get more focus on the subsidies, we get more focus on immigration reform. We just can't say explicitly it has to be immigration reform or the shutdown doesn't end, because that's not realistic and it's too difficult on the people who are suffering from the shutdown.
All right, and lastly, Mr. Terry, your thoughts?
I think Colin just nailed it. You know, we have to have a measured approach to this. I mean, we always want everything and we want it instantly. So I think taking this back, it needs to go back to committee, subcommittee, it needs to go through the process, and we need to find out, you know, what we can do in certain times. We can't do everything at once. So trying to make that the forefront of the issue right now. And I think the American public overall is just fatigued when it comes to government shutdowns, period. People want a government that they can trust is actually going to have their best interests at heart and it's going to work for them. So the fatigue with government shutdowns, even if you are doing it for a noble purpose, and this is a noble purpose, people are just going to, you know, kind of tune it out and just kind of become even more disillusioned with government. And that affects multiple things. There's second, third, fourth order effects to that. So honestly, we do need to have a clear message. And to Shavonne's point with the messaging, I've always had an issue with the Democratic Party overall in regards to messaging as compared to the Republican side. You know, whether they're right or wrong on an issue, everybody's on the same sheet of music. And it seems like with the Democratic Party, it seems like we're somewhat fractured in that regard, where we have different parts of the party, different factions within the party that are saying a different part of the same message, and there's not one real focused emphasis. So I think as we continue to move along, you know, we're getting better at that. And the ACA subsidies issue that we had at the end of the year was a clear indication of that. But we just need to be able to do that more and to be able to make sure that, you know, obviously we have the support of the Democratic base and make sure we're fighting for what they want us to fight for, because a lot of the Democratic base feels like they're not being heard or they're not being listened to. So taking all that into account, you know, fight the fights that we know we can win and make sure that while we're doing that, that we message. But in regards to tying this directly to that, you know, I think Colin was spot on with that. We need to have that measured approach and be able to, you know, don't bite off more than we can chew in any given moment.
All right. We do have a guest on the panel that would like to ask you all a question. Ayana, thank you so much for being patient with us. Did you want to ask any of the candidates a question or add something to the conversation?
I wanted to add something to the conversation. I've spoken to a few of you before. One of the things I want all of you running for the legislative branch to consider is that you're contending with a policy of the executive branch. People who are saying, you need to abolish this, you need to abolish this, you need to abolish this. When it is the policy of the office to do what ICE is doing, to have the 3,000 person a day quota, to remove anybody who can be removed, to go into people's homes to do warrantless searches, it doesn't matter if you don't give those people one dime. They're still going to do what they're doing because that is their office policy. Your role as the legislator is to put parameters in place when it comes to the money that you're giving them. It's not just, well, I'm going to abolish this and everything's going to be better. No, because they still have policies in place that will continue this behavior. So, and another thing, and I think Shavonne and Colin hit the nail on the head. It has to be a measured approach. You have to consider when you abolish something or when you shut down something, who is affected by that. You can't just go in and turn off the lights because you don't like what you see. You have to change the landscape. You have to change what you see. And we've done nearly 100 of these town halls. And I can tell you, I could probably count on my hand the number of people who have actually said out of their mouths what they would replace things with. And I haven't heard anybody say anything about immigration except amnesty. So when people talk about we want to abolish this, we want to get rid of this, but then you don't have another plan, an actual law, not a policy, but an actual law that you want to introduce that you think would be better or helpful, well, abolishing isn't going to do anything. I mean, it sounds good, right? It sounds, yes, you sound like a fighter. You sound very strong. Okay, but what are we going to do next? Because immigration enforcement is not wrong. It's not wrong for a country to enforce its immigration laws or to have law enforcement officers who enforce immigration laws. There's nothing wrong with that. How they go about it, the policy is probably wrong, but the actual enforcement is not wrong. So what enforcement idea would you have that would be better than what we're currently doing? And on the ACA was supposed to be like a parlay to universal health care. We never got around to it. The Democrats never got around to it. The Republicans never got around to it. And suddenly when these things are expiring and everybody's scrambling, oh no, millions of Americans are going to lose their health care. Let's shut down the government so we can prevent that. No, it's too late. It's too late. You had years. It's too late. Where are the ideas? Where are the policy ideas? People, for the love of God, please, where are your ideas? Where are the laws? Where is your bill? Even if it's just a mock bill, show me what you want to do that's better than what we have, or that extends it, or that improves it. Because the ACA needs improvements. I don't see anybody introducing improvements. It is your job when you get into Congress, both houses, to take care of either your state or your district. And when the government is shut down, you're not doing either of those things. You can't just shut it down. You have to actually change the law. When Congress is in session, we see people doing work. You see what the problems are. Why are you not working on the problems? Why do I hear you talking about bills to help somebody subpoena Bill and Hillary Clinton? I don't give a damn about that. No offense. I don't care. And I can guarantee you the people in those districts with the representatives that are trying to sneak this into the budget bill don't care about that either.
Okay.
It seems like that they're not responsive to what the real needs. I know I'm filibustering. My apologies.
I wanted to get, because I want them to respond to you. So do you want them to respond to the immigration portion first?
That's fine. Yes, I apologize.
Okay. Could you reiterate what you mentioned? You just want them to kind of see what their ideas are regarding the reform of immigration. You want them to respond to that?
What's your idea for immigration enforcement?
Okay, Terry, he has his hand up first, so you can go ahead and respond, Terry.
So I want to start by saying, yes, I do support abolish ICE. I have that whole section on my campaign website regarding that. And that question is fair that you're asking, like, what replaces ICE? It's okay to say that you abolish it, but what does that really mean? And so think back to the early 2000s before, the 9/11 attacks and everything. These things didn't exist. DHS itself didn't exist. So if we want to abolish this, that doesn't mean that we have to just get rid of immigration enforcement overall. It just means that we're ending an agency that's unaccountable to the American people. And so when you look at it in that context, you would take the border security piece, and that would remain with CBP, right? They would still carry out the border security functions. And then you take out the immigration courts and, the decisions of when those judges make decisions, they adjudicate somebody's case and they say, okay, this person is cleared for removal or they can be removed from the country. When that order comes down, that still remains with the Department of Justice. That's where you would put that responsibility back up. You don't need that to have that as part of ICE. Same thing with asylum and legal processing. That goes back to citizenship and customs, immigration services. So USCIS would handle that responsibility. And I know they do have an investigations element, their HSI. You know, you put that back with the DOJ as well for their law enforcement task forces. And you have all these things. And the only thing that you would need, the only missing piece that you would have is you would need like a very slim, modified civil immigration enforcement area that focuses on basically compliance with court office compliance. And that would be focused solely on executing those court orders. So you can take the responsibilities of ICE and you can place them with agencies that already exist and divvy up their responsibilities in a very smart, measured manner. And then you could say, okay, well, ICE is gone now, and we put these responsibilities essentially back where they were. Maybe with some small modifications, this will be worked out, you know, in subcommittee, committee, and Congress, and then voted on how to restructure these. And then all that money, all these billions of dollars that were consistently given ICE, you know, Congress could pull that money back and reappropriate it elsewhere. You could put that into other programs that actually are going to help the American people. And I can't sit here and say, well, I know what that looks like right now, but that's discussions that you would have in the legislative process to be able to put these back. And given everything there, the enforcement continues, but all the chaos surrounding ICE would end. Because before I came to this decision about, you know, yes, I stand for abolishing ICE, I had the hopes that maybe ICE would be able to be saved. Maybe it would be redeemable. But given the shootings of, you know, innocent Americans on the street and just the things that they're doing right now, I feel like ICE is too far gone. That the brand of ICE in all forms has just been ruined with the American people. There will never be trust or confidence in ICE ever again. So we are at the point now where we have to draw that line in the sand and say, yes, there needs to be no more ICE. We need to abolish this, pull their funding, reallocate, give it back to these other agencies that are a good fit, that can handle these responsibilities, reallocate whatever funding we need to, and move forward from there, while we are still seeking out accountability. Because as you all know, there's a lot to answer for. We're just not going to abolish ICE and just allow everything else to fall by the wayside. There still needs to be that accountability piece to hold everyone that's involved in this accountable. But we can't abolish ICE in a way that still works. It keeps enforcement going on, but it ends the chaos. So that's kind of my take on it. I mean, this obviously has to go through Congress and get vetted and get talked about, discussed and everything. But, you know, there are ways we can do this in a measured, smart way that alleviates all the chaos.
All right, anybody else want to jump in? All right, Colin, then I'll go to you, Max, next.
Yeah, there's a couple of policies I'd want to see that come before the steps Terry's laying out. And the first would be an audit of civil rights violations by CBP and ICE. Because he's right, we need some kind of immigration enforcement. CBP has traditionally had that role. They've done a decent job of it in some cases, in some administrations. But who could possibly trust them today after, for example, Bovino stood up and possibly monetized tweets about violating Americans' rights? We don't know if he made money off of that personally. And we don't trust the administration right now to do that work. We need an external audit to see what cases were there of violence, are there civil rights violations, searches without warrants, things like that. What is the discipline? What are the consequences? And there needs to be some accountability internally for that, and there's got to be a public record of it. And so some kind of accountability process. And I think an external audit is the easiest and interstitial way of accomplishing that before we get into those big structural reforms. The second thing, and this is what I was referring to earlier, in the 1850s, 1870s, we passed the Ku Klux Klan Act, which basically says when a state or local official violates somebody's civil rights, the victim could sue them for damages. We've been using that law for 150 years to hold state and local officials accountable, but it's never applied to federal officials because it wasn't intended to. It's supposed to apply to state and local governments. That's an easy change, and it's a change that creates this accountability mechanism in the civil courts, which the administration, not just this president, but any future president who decides to use federal agents to violate those rights, it takes it off the table because it's done through civil courts, there's less room for interference, and it gives people a direct remedy. Right now, we're seeing a lot of people who are subject to illegal searches and seizures because ICE is using administrative warrants instead of official warrants, and there's nothing they can do about it because the legal remedy is you suppress the evidence, but the evidence isn't being used in court, they're just being deported. And so there's nothing they can do, and there's no restraint on ICE for using those rights violations. Well, if there's a lawsuit possible, now there's a restraint. So those are two things I would say, not instead of what Terry was saying, but things we could do first that would start to repair some of the damage, make it possible then to focus on some of those longer-term structural reforms.
Okay, Max?
I basically just wanted to say that I more or less agree with Terry's position. I've kind of just come to the same conclusions, more or less, thinking about it for the past, month or so. Things have been ramping up significantly. A lot of this problem with DHS and ICE has definitely been a symptom of the increased authoritarian bent that we as a country took on post 2001, and in many, many ways, in many different sectors of the government, I think it's long past time to walk that back. Also, on Anaya's point, she got a little bit into sort of the healthcare sector and democratic strategy and behavior more broadly. And I just kind of wanted to add on to that with, as a grassroots guy who's very much my own man, I definitely hold some frustration, borderline resentment with the Democratic establishment and the way they handle business by and large. There's a large focus, and you can see it from the way things have gone, post initial ACA, where we've had trifectas, where we've had complete control of the government, where nothing's been improved in any substantial way, and that's been a trend on many different policies where it ends up just being, let's not rock the boat or change the status quo too much and chase the symptom of the problem rather than the cause, and enact a lot of treatment instead of cure, like, say, an actual universal healthcare solution, Medicare for all or whatever, or in housing. A lot of the platforms I see, especially in the more mainstream element, pretty much start and end at building affordable housing and subsidized housing, which that's fine. That's in fact a very good thing. But if it starts there and ends there, that's a ridiculous thing. You need to manage the market forces that made the housing market unaffordable in the first place. And I just think as a party and as voters and as citizens, we really need to make sure that our representation moves away from that line of thinking and acting.
Okay. Shavonne, go ahead.
I just wanted to do really quickly. So I think where I stand is at, I don't want to say the intersection of both, because I agree with what everyone has said here, is like our previous strategy has been to, essentially use this political leverage to move forward very large initiatives that don't really have any alternatives and that are difficult to actually implement. But I will also like to contribute the concept of a lack of infrastructure to actually address and build any of these policies out. Like if we were to really manage how to allow ACA to be what it was originally intended to be, which was universal healthcare, right? We do not have the broadband access to kind of close some of those access gaps. So it is a much larger ask. Like even in the infrastructure bill, I think there were several $7 billion. I don't want to misquote a number, but there were $7 billion to help with broadband access in rural areas, and none of that money was spent, right? So we struggle significantly as a nation overall, regardless of where we sit, with actual implementation and readiness to actually deliver on any of the outcomes of the policies that we push through. So if we did want to expand ACA, we would also have to include telehealth options, right? That would also open up a different level of management that a lot of jurisdictions are not equipped to manage. So when we think about solutions, we also have to think about the steps to that solution, right? So if we talk about affordable housing, outside of the narrative or the funding construction, it's how are the individuals on the ground going to be equipped to deal with the volume of requests, right? So when we do think about affordable housing, for example, here in District 4, they finally opened up the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and they had 5,000 slots, I believe it was, and they had 47,000 applications, right? So that already shows you the sheer gap in the need, the ability to address the need, and how to execute the need. So now the ask isn't affordable housing. The ask is, how do we accommodate the people who even had the bandwidth to respond to that program, which closed in I think 1 to 2 days because of the sheer volume. So we have to be mindful as we're designing policy that is going to run counter to how we functioned as a society, we have to ensure that we have the ability to implement it, right? From a funding perspective, from an overall strategic understanding. And I think Colin did a great job of baseline data management. Like in Minnesota, they were trying for years to get bills passed that would require federal funding to be tethered to de-escalation tactics, to be tied to modifying who trained the police forces, which we all know is the IDF, right? So it's like making sure that the baseline problem or the problem statement is clearly identified and captures the nuance of the people that we're trying to solve the problem for before we can start designing a solution. Because a solution for me may not be a solution for Max, right? So we have to make sure that that baseline is there, but more importantly, the ability to execute it and spend the money allocated is there. So if we are allocating $50 million to modify healthcare within a city, but they don't have the infrastructure to sustain the volume, like in Prince George's, we have a primary care doctor shortage, right? So what does that mean, right? What does that mean in terms of the current landscape of healthcare? And what does that mean in terms of how to correct that in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years? So progress is the goal, but I think implementation and execution are just as important to how we do that, and we can't do that sometimes without baseline information.
All right, Miss Randi, go ahead.
All right. I love everything that you said, Ms. Shavonne. Now, here, Miss Ayana, when you talk about, I agree with you 100%. Like, we still need enforcement. We have to look at the how and why of it, right? That's what I think about enforcement. The how and why. Why are we deporting people? Like, because there are reasons to deport Elon Musk. There are reasons to deport Andrew Tate. With the other guy, the leprechaun from Canada, that shot Megan Thee Stallion. There are reasons that some people do need to be deported. So we need to take that on, right? So it's not a bad thing. The how and why since 1/20/25 was, are you brown? Okay, let's throw you out. So so I completely agree with you there. A lot of the reasons why people are in immigration court or whatever is bureaucracy. It's the paperwork. Like, have you ever gone, I can remember wanting to change my license over and seeing a long line and just say, I'll ride on expired license for I'm not sitting in this line. But it's even more it's like the MVA on steroids. And so that's how we get people, that's where we need more people hired. We need to give those jobs and at a federal level, and to have that run more smoothly, I think, when we come to redoing it. So I think we definitely have enforcement. We have to work at the lowest common denominator first. And with the ACA, as Shavonne said, we got to also do some voter education, because every time we get just a little bit working, they bring somebody else in. They do that. So the ACA was intended to be universal health care, and immediately in the 2010 midterms, people didn't show up to make sure we had the amount of people there that we passed the ACA for. And it just ebb and flow. This is where education comes into effect, like where people think Republicans are better at the economy. But if you look at the numbers and the facts, they destroy the economy and Democrats come to fix it. And then we kick Democrats out of the office immediately. And we have had someone at the executive level that wanted universal health care, but because it wasn't put in a catchy phrase, people didn't want to look into actually what that was 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? So we have to start educating, stop leaning on rhetoric and stuff. And I think that's part of it. And it seems so simplified. If we stop leaning on rhetoric so much and educate everybody in our district, here's what it is, where, PG County might have just a primary care shortage. On the Eastern Shore, we got healthcare shortage. There's no specialists. We have a couple of hospitals that can do some stuff, but mostly you got to get flown out to Johns Hopkins to get some decent help. So we are bottom of the barrel, and we need the federal funding because the state funding is going to the Capitol Heights area. It's going to PG. It's going to Baltimore. That's where it's mostly going. So when it comes to, we have universal healthcare, we have several forms of it. If you like Medicare for all, cool, but there's some problems with equity there. If you like what universal healthcare that Hillary Clinton had that was super detailed. I think you can mix all of them and make there are the ideas that are out there that people need to lean into and move forward with. But we got to stop depending on rhetoric. We got to stop leaning on like perfection, because those are the only ways we can keep consistency in teaching the people and go from there.
All right,
Sorry.
Justin?
Yeah, so I just want to quickly say I think Terry and Colin kind of took much of what I would say in relation to ICE reform, or spreading those duties out to other departments, and also instituting, new policies. One new policy I would like to see for federal enforcement is a civilian review board as well. I think that kind of a policy would be very important, because I think what we're really talking about is general law enforcement principles, and we give law enforcement a lot of tools, and obviously, most notably pew-pews, right? But I think the foundation of all law enforcement is the tool of trust. And I think when that's violated, it is very difficult to get back. And I think what we've seen with ICE over the last year, especially, and it wasn't just the last year, there's plenty that's happened prior to that, but with this administration and what their desires have been, it has continued to violate trust over and over and over again without accountability. Now, I don't know how many of the panelists are actually sitting in currently positions of elected office, but I'm currently sitting as a county commissioner. I've been in that capacity for a little over 2 years. And in that, I've partnered with law enforcement in, our DA's office by expanding our gang violence task force by two new officers. And those positions come with a lot of accountability, and because they have, the reality of working for the legitimate public safety. Like we have a gang problem in Harrisburg, and these individuals, go out and do very difficult work. I want to resource our federal government for the reality of immigration enforcement, especially when there's dangerous, violent criminals that are in our streets that are also here in an undocumented way. I don't know that much of us disagree on that. I think the challenge is we disagree, or we not disagree. We have to think of policies that ensure that those great privileges and trust that's handed to those people are honored, and we're just not seeing that right now. And that's why I think abolishing ICE, starting over, and ensuring that the policies match the kind of desired outcomes that we would get for safer communities is really important. And obviously, immigration as a policy is a very broad thing, and there's all kinds of different options at our disposal there. When we talk about healthcare and the Democratic Party not having an agenda, I also think sometimes we just have the wrong agenda. And here's an example. President Biden in 20 years is going to be remembered for the massive investment in infrastructure. Our region, Pennsylvania's 10th, is getting a bridge that's I think over $1 billion, that no one locally would be able to afford, right? But it's going to take it's going to take 10 years for that bridge to go in, or however long, and it's going to be traffic, and it's going to be, no one's going to in the moment see that this changed their life or made their life better. And so I think when we get in charge and when we have the ability to run up the score, we need to run up the score with things the American people feel immediately. If broadband access, like was said earlier, is something we can roll out the door and get it implemented quickly to where people can feel the difference right away. We need to look at the things that we can turn the light switch on right away, as opposed to the things that are more like dimmers, and it's going to be a very slow burn until people feel the difference. And so I just say that because I think that's one of the things where Democrats have missed opportunities to run up the score when they're in charge. And that's what I think that in the future, if my party were to be in power in all three branches again, hopefully we would deliver in a way that Americans would have a difficult time voting against us, because they've seen and felt the impact of the policies that have been put in place.
And to your point, not only running up the score whenever you are in power, but to also tell what you're actually doing, the accomplishments. It doesn't hurt to brag. I think
Definitely.
the Democratic Party tends to just be so modest and just be so so buttoned up at times. People, a lot of times, the majority of the public is not policy or just political nerds. So they have to understand, to the public, they're not tapping into politics on a day-to-day basis. So they have to push out, no matter what medium it is, to let people know what you're doing. You have to brag. There's nothing wrong with that, especially in this day and age in politics.
But bragging about
go ahead.
bragging about the way you've delivered for your constituents. For example,
Absolutely.
as a county commissioner, I can say I took our county, who has nearly 1,500 employees, from an $11 minimum wage to a $16 minimum wage. Had I not been elected, that wouldn't have happened. Our county prison had a punitive pay to stay policy that it changed in 2023, where every day you were there, you incurred debt. $5 a day. If you came back, it could go up to $10 a day. We had $65 million on the books of debt that we were getting like $30,000 back a year, but it was impacting the lives of all these individuals. And we were also giving millions of dollars to reentry every year to try to make reentry better so that we had better outcomes for recidivism. I abolished $65 million of that debt. I fought hard to build consensus with my colleagues to where we could see the value of abolishing this debt. And I think that's, I can certainly brag on myself, but I would say I've delivered for the people. I'm bragging on the reality of what we've collectively experienced. I could go on, but I guess I'm just saying those types of things can also be talked about in a way that, I can actually, go speak with somebody, put them on camera, who has had thousands of dollars, taken off their books. And now they're able to, get into an apartment, whereas previous that debt was holding them back. Or they're now able to, get a vehicle that can get them adequate transportation to their job and rebuild their life post-incarceration, and let them tell the story of how the policies impacted them, so that, people believe that we actually have elected officials that are working on our behalf.
Okay. All right. Ayana, did they answer your questions regarding particularly the specific policy prescriptions?
1000%. I love all of the responses. I appreciate them so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ayana. I appreciate your input.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Hey,
All
is
right.
it okay if I say one thing?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was something, it was Justin talking about, broadband access, and actually a few people talked about broadband access over the course of this whole stream. Kind of reminded me of just one thing we need to do when we're engaging in those projects, which is really holding our private vendors and whatnot to it, in terms of whether or not they deliver period, or deliver on budget, or deliver in a reasonable time frame. Because what broadband made me think of is it was in the 90s, early 2000s. AT&T was supposed to hook up the whole East Coast with fiber optic. They took the money and ran. Nothing ever came of it. That can never be allowed to happen again. Nothing of the sort, and it happens in the defense industry all the time. Defense contractors are completely unaccountable. They're given a blank check every single year, and it's one of the reasons our defense spending has ballooned to the point where it devastates our ability to address other issues in the lives of American citizens.
I had a question, if you don't mind, Jazz.
Yeah, sure.
It's actually a piggyback of like, I think what we're all speaking about from various points, but like mainly what you said earlier about like messaging and communication. And I believe most of us are grassroots candidates, right? And so when we did our like cost per voter, budget line, or, and considering, I'll speak from where I sit, is we have very, very low voter turnout. Maryland is like a plus 36, state. Like we're Prince George's, Prince George's is like a plus 36. So we're extremely Democrat. So it's a very democratically safe seat, but we also have some of the lowest voter turnout. And when you start thinking about the best practices and metrics around communication, like we're talking about how we're refining our message and creating strategies and making sure that people are engaged. And I'm asking, like, for my own edification, right? Like, what are some of the pathways outside of like town halls? Because the people who are coming to town halls are already engaged in politics, right? But in terms of the people who have been essentially left behind by the party, because it does take more work, it does take more money, it does take more touch points. When you have people who have been registered as Democrats since 2003, but they've never voted, right? Or when you have, fewer than 1 in 4 people coming out in a very democratically safe district. And so what does communication and engagement look like? This Our Vote Counts, right? This is a very accessible way to touch point with people, their followers, everyone we reposted, they retweeted, the people in the comments who have followed us, right? But what about the people who may not know about this platform, or we can't send out 500,000 mailers 50 times, So it's like, what does that strategy look like with engaging that part of the party that necessarily hasn't seen themselves in this political theater that we're currently navigating? That's my question. Sorry.
All right, anybody want to answer Ms. Shavonne's question?
Well, one of the things that's worked for me is actually retail canvassing. I've been out and I'm in shopping center parking lots, grocery store parking lots. I'm out there talking to people. I don't really bother them when they're going in the store because people are focused on what they need to get and get out of there. I found that people are more conversational when they're out on their way to the car and they're unloading their groceries. I find time to talk to them there, have a quick conversation with them, introduce myself, speak about what my platform is centered around, let them know I'm running, and then hand them a palm card or a business card, something like that. And that kind of moves the conversation. And then after a week or so doing that, I go log on to my website, check my analytics to see if my views and stuff have increased on my website, the engagement with my website. But that's really what's kind of been working for me personally. I mean, I do roadside visibility too. I'm out there with signs letting people know that I'm running for Congress, because the thing about being a grassroots candidate is that none of us have much name recognition. So we're essentially starting from nothing, having to get out there and do visibility to let people know that, hey, we are an option in this race. Here we are. Here's our platform. So I just give people ways to identify me. If you've seen me on Facebook or social media, you see that I have my vehicle all decked out. I got signs on the side of my vehicle. I got my back windshield, the vinyl done on there with my campaign name, logo, photo, a QR code. Like, I'm just doing everything possible to be seen by people, because for me, that is the very first step, is to be seen, to be noticed, to let people know that you are actually running. So being out where people actually are is really working dividends for me. I've been able to establish a volunteer base just from that alone, where people are actually seeking me out, want to know if they can volunteer for my campaign. So that's kind of how I'm approaching this. I mean, we're still in the early stages right now. People are just now beginning to unthaw from the holidays and beginning to pay attention. So I'm going to keep that up as I move in February through April timeframe. That's really been working for me. I mean, I have been traveling through the 5 counties in my district, having a meet and greets as well. Turnout has been decent, but again, people are just now waking up and actually getting engaged, especially now since my rep decided that he was going to retire at the end of his term. So now it's an open seat here in the district. So that's what's kind of working out for me. If anybody else has any other ideas, but right now it's just about getting noticed.
Okay, Randy.
Well, I can say, oh, sorry.
I'll let you go next, Colin, after Randy.
The key, just like Terry said, it's go where the people are. Very The Little Mermaid of us all. You got 5 counties. I got 11 counties. And it's really hard, but what we've been able to do is establish a volunteer base too. And we have crunched the numbers. Before I even signed up to run, I knew where the missing votes have been. And everyone's, even without redistricting, which is what Maryland's hooting and hollering about with Maryland 1, it's clear what our party has failed to do and who our party has failed to talk to throughout every single contest, the last 8 cycles. It was clear to me. And the more I dove into the numbers and dove into the analytics, the turnout is the problem. We have 91,000 people that are registered Democrats that have never voted in a primary. So guess who's outside guess who's going to be outside this whole time, knocking on doors, going where they are. We have events. We're flipping town halls on their side. I say we, but I am. And we're turning them into kitchen table conversations. It's not me standing up answering questions. We're doing group therapy style, like sitting around and going into different places. So hopefully like bookstores, libraries, just wherever people meet. And whenever we're out, like restaurants, eating at a bar or something like that, I talk to people and I give them my business card has a big fat QR code right on it, and so a little guerrilla marketing, because people will always scan QR codes. They don't even care. What does that lead to? I have a friend who works for IT for the government and says, I hate that people do that, but you're absolutely right. So that's it. It's tapping into that marketing part, and the money's not there. I feel bad for even asking, right? You said they're unthawing, Terry. There is no unthawing. It's still cold and icy.
I'm getting a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. But honestly, the last week has like put a damper on the campaigning. But what we are focusing on is getting on those doors, getting on those phone calls. We've had some really amazing people, even from the western side of the state, like sign up and been excited to volunteer and make those calls and do the postcards and make those voter education knocks known. So that's where we're diving in. Get the voter data if you've got the voter data. And I would say, even especially in Maryland, like if they're active like indies too, try to get them to flip until June 24th to make that vote.
All right, Colin?
Yeah, go where the people are is just objectively good advice, but it really depends on where your district is. Mine is one of the biggest geographically in the country, and our population density is about 1/10 of the average in the United States. I'm going to drive about 1,200 miles this weekend, and I'm probably going to see fewer people than the rest of you guys see walking down the street. So go where the people are means something very different here. So we're using, obviously, digital tools as much as we can to reach out to constituents. But the other thing we're trying to do is target organizations. I can't get out to Dodge City, for example, on a regular basis because it's 6 hours away from where I live. What I can do is reach out to the local Democratic Party organization and make some proxies there, make some allies there, leave the literature there, and trust them to carry the word while I'm not in the district, or while I'm not in the county, and then come back as often as I can. And just by harnessing as many of those local champions as possible, at least you're getting that word out and getting those QR codes out, because you're right, that's a fantastic way to get people into digital materials. But it really takes that people power, and if they're campaign staff, that's great, if they're volunteers, that's great. But it's really those small, especially in rural counties, those small city and county DIM organizations, where honestly, it's the ladies who have been doing the work for a lot of years. They're always showing up at the potlucks, they're always showing up at somebody's house, they're always showing up at the county fair to register voters. They know exactly what to do, they know who to talk to, they know what materials are going to work and what won't. If you're doing materials translated, as people who speak in a local idiomatic Spanish, for example, can help you with a really good translation. And you rely on that local expertise, because those people are the hardest workers and the smartest people you're going to find to do the most for the campaign, and then just for the party in general, when you can't just walk into a town hall and find 1,000 people waiting for you.
All right, Max?
Oh, no, I mean, everyone's hitting the nail on the head. I mean, as far as my district goes, pretty conventional, pretty normal population layout. It's pretty easy to go out and get to where the people are. Honestly, my favorite is doing the sort of door-to-door canvassing stuff style. It's the way that I know I can get to people directly, even if they're not someone who would normally find me on social media or something. I mean, all of my campaign materials have the election dates and stuff, and I tell them, I'm like, you don't have an excuse now, you don't have to vote for me, but if you slap this on your fridge, you better go participate. My favorite thing is to educate the people I'm speaking to, because a lot of our biggest problems come from a lack of civic engagement or knowledge about the political process or the effect it has on your life. Tons of people just not only don't vote in the primaries, but like aren't even registered or think about the news at all. I was talking to a coworker about the fact that I was running, and he like stared at me blankly for a while, and then like 5 minutes later, after the conversation ended, he's like, "Hey man, what does Congress do? So that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to fight against. You know, this. I mean, I know the odds. The whole idea of what I'm doing here isn't necessarily just to get elected. It's to reach as many people as possible and make as many people understand as I can how important it is to be involved in the civic process.
All right, Justin.
Yeah, so I have the background of running a very grassroots campaign in 2023 for county commissioner. And just to, set the stage, our county, Dauphin County, has about 300,000 residents. Has the, capital city of Harrisburg, has Hershey, Pennsylvania in it as well. So very large county. Democrats had not been in control of the county for over 100 years. I think it was even back to close to the Civil War, since there were two county commissioners. It's a three people on the board. So it had been two Republicans and one Democrat for quite some time. When we ran that campaign, we raised a total of $10,000. Each of the other candidates raised roughly $250,000 each. So we were out fundraised 25-1. But we knocked a lot of doors. The other thing we did was we were very strategic about our marketing. We were on social media. We showed up to every single forum that was provided, even when we had to show up for half of one and half of another on the same night, just to try to be at both places. We did this kind of house party model where people who connected to the campaign maybe offered to volunteer. We said, do you know 10 people on your block that you could invite to your house? You provide the refreshments because we're poor and we don't have the ability to do it. And I will show up for an hour, take questions, talk, mingle with your friends, and encourage them to vote for me. And, if you're really strategic and organized, you could have 3 house parties in a night, one that starts at 6, one that starts at 7, one that starts at 8. And from 6 to 9, you can hit 3 different houses and have 30 people who are open to hearing about your campaign, who they already know because a trusted source, one of their friends, invited them. And so you have kind of an open audience to hear from you. And certainly everything else that's been shared is really important. We did one billboard buy in that. We did no mailers. We kind of were like, we hate mailers. We also did a lot of lit dropping because we knew being on the doors, that can get time consuming when you talk to somebody for 30 minutes or an hour, which is great because you can really express who you are in that 30 minutes or an hour. But through lit dropping, it was basically a way of mobilizing volunteers to kind of put door hangers on doors. And we made those very interesting. The front of them had a shark on it, and it said something to the effect of in Jaws 2, the mayor was still the same in Jaws 2 as it was in Jaws 1. And then people were like, what the heck is this mailer? And they flipped it over and it said, because local elections matter, vote for me for a county commissioner. And basically what we were trying to do was say, like, we want you to actually turn this over and look at, who we are. And everyone was talking about these even on Twitter and stuff. And so I think finding ways to guerrilla market really matters. But the house model one is a way to kind of scale the intimate and mobilize your volunteers to do that work for you. And then you just show up and then you have someone who gets you out in time to get to the next one. Just an idea.
Okay, thank you for that. So we do have another guest on the panel, Sianka. She would like to, if you have a question for the candidates, feel free, Sianka, if you want to add something to the conversation. Welcome.
Hey, hi everybody. Good afternoon. The political talking points is great. It's awesome. But there are a lot of demographics, no names mentioned, feel like they're going to be left out again. So what can you, and I know Congress and senators and the president's supposed to be for all people, but there are some aspects where some feel left out. So what can you do to make it a mixing bowl, like an actual mixing bowl, and not just one side of the area getting fair play while the other one's getting backhanded, if you know what I mean.
I'm sorry. Anybody can jump in. Who I'm sorry, Randy. Randy, go ahead. Sorry.
Randy, yeah.
Accessibility is key. I come from a part of the district where we've never had a candidate come out of here. In the lower shore, we have horrible child poverty rates. We haven't had money coming through for the schools, like, and there are particular precincts, particular areas that have been completely ignored by everybody, including my own old neighborhood that I grew up in. So for me, it's about accessibility, bringing on the ones that will do the work, bringing on the ones that are civically involved all the time, but also letting other people know, while I may not have participated in apathy, I understand it. I get that. And if you come with me and we make this happen, I think I mentioned in my own town hall, is one of the keys to me is stealing Sarah McBride's tactic. She has a bus that goes through Delaware. When she's not in DC, she's riding that bus, stopping at libraries, stopping all over the place. I'll park in front of a Walmart. I don't care. But you know that you can have a place in this, that you have a voice. Even now, before I have any power, I got a big old mouth. So people have come to me with issues, and I've tried to get them help wherever I possibly can, because it's important to show that leadership now. But the communities that feel like they don't have a voice and that it doesn't matter, I understand where that's coming from, and that's what I try to let them know. But people wouldn't be ignoring you if they didn't think that you had the power. So let's show them we have the power to move forward and make some big things happen.
Okay, Shavonne?
Yeah, this is a question I would love to answer. So I think I look at it two-pronged, right? So I will give a little background as to why I'm answering the question this way. So my background is in capital planning. So every day I take problem statements and turn them into narratives so that we can get projects funded, right? And that is how I look at a lot of the issues in America, like outside of our challenges with strategy, right? We also severely lack the ability to communicate impacts and outcomes. And considering the needs or the challenges in various communities may overlap, but bundling them together does cause the inability to capture the relevant nuance, right? So like if you think about Black Americans and our relationship to the country, like I wrote this paper in college about the intergenerational impacts of trauma, right? So there's a concept called epigenetic inheritance, and what it breaks down is trauma is inherited generationally through the HPA gland in the brain. So a mother's womb will carry that trauma generationally. So if you are consistently encountering various stages of opposition and oppression, it's going to manifest differently within those very specific communities. So when we speak about problems, the problem statement is not blanket oppression or blanket violence or blanket terror. It has to be designed to accommodate the needs of each community. So my goal, if elected, is to always accurately capture the gaps and the concerns in oppression as it relates to very specific communities, instead of grouping it under one umbrella and thinking that solution that will come from that narrative will impact those groups. So the solution has to be tailored to the problem, not the problem and then figuring out what the solution will look like. We kind of have to work a little bit backwards on that.
All right, Justin?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question, and I don't want to get into policy. I don't want to get into talking points with it. I'll just say I've met with Bhutanese Nepali leaders and Muslim leaders. Those are two different communities within Pennsylvania's 10th district. The Bhutanese Nepali is a pretty large refugee community, and our Muslim neighbors. And in both instances, I've been asked if I would hire staff if I were elected into this role from a staff member from their community. And so I've expressed a desire to do that, not just a willingness, but a desire, because I want staff that reflects the Pennsylvania's 10th district. And I honestly think that actually helps me serve the district better. It helps me understand the needs of those communities and also the decisions I'm going to make and how they're going to be interpreted by those communities. And so I think that's just an example of ensuring that, if you are put in the position of authority of to be a congressperson, to ensure that the staff diversity is there so that as decisions are made, there's an awareness of how it's going to impact different communities.
Right. I kind of come at it from two different angles. One is just the fact that as a person, kind of where my philosophy goes and priorities all kind of lie, all feed into sort of creating a broader system in which the not just literal but like societal systemic infrastructure exists for anyone and everyone to succeed. Equal distribution of, say, educational resources and whatnot. And on the other side of the coin, I'm a mechanic. I like fixing very specific problems. I'm very specific problem, specific solution oriented. So when I'm going around talking to people or thinking about what specific portions of the community need, I'm very receptive to hearing specifics, and I'm very considerate of the fact that I need to address any and all specific needs that are expressed to me. I'm the kind of person who likes to just go about and see what people have to say and bring to me, because I can't necessarily just foretell what a community I'm not necessarily a member of would need.
All right, Colin.
I think it's the same as I was saying earlier. Every district is different, and every district has its own mix of communities. And the most important thing is just get to know those communities personally. Go talk to them, hear what they need, hear what they want, because we can't assume. There's lots of things I assume that immigrant communities, especially in Kansas, want, but until I go out and talk to them, I don't know for a fact. And what solutions they're looking for, I'm not going to know that either. My job is to represent them, not to tell them what they need. And so my entire tactic here has just been go out and listen as much as humanly possible. And as much as anything else, that just takes time. Because the first time you show up and talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm running for office, what do you need? They're immediately thinking, well, you want my help, and how do I get it? How are you looking forward to get my help? It's got to be a real conversation. They've got to know you for that to happen. So it's a process that takes months or years. And we're just doing what we can every single day to make that relationship happen so that we can have an organic and real conversation about what we can do to support.
Okay, Terry.
Hey, Bianca, thank you for this question. Honestly, it's a very loaded question, and there's no single answer to it. And I'm going to hit it from kind of like a policy perspective here a little bit. There's a lot of things wrong and why people don't feel represented. And something basic you can look at is just gerrymandering itself. The politicians are picking their voters, not the other way around. The way they draw these lines, I looked at my district map, and there are squiggly lines that are cutting out certain areas. If you really enlarge the map and look into it, you see how they just carve out, their selected voters. So that's why a lot of people don't feel like they're represented. And we need a more diverse Congress. We need more people in there to actually look like America. Right now, if you post up a picture of the representatives in Congress, it strongly favors one side a lot more than it favors, the rest of America, what America actually looks like. And so that's the result of years and years of gerrymandering. My grandfather once told me when I was younger that all politics is local. And that's how everything starts, at the local level, and it works its way up through the municipalities and the state levels and everything. That's where all this stuff is controlled. So it's really important that we stay engaged as voters. And part of that is making sure that we protect the right to vote and then actually participate and make sure that we do our due diligence and check people out that are running for office. And the second part of this is money, right? Money in politics, and money is access. So repealing Citizens United has to be on the front burner of this new grassroots Congress that we're trying to get money out of politics, because right now the donors and the lobbyists and all the big money super PAC folks, they're the ones that have Congress's ear on issues because they're lining their campaign pockets and providing them with money, financing, so they're the ones that are being listened to right now, not the everyday voter. It's just not happening that way. And then another point, to go to Colin here, is that we have to hold our representatives accountable when they don't represent us. Too many times people have been in office for years. That was the case in my district. Congressman Steny Hoyer has been in Congress for 44 years. That guy has probably, I'm talking to people around the district, people have not seen him out too much unless there's cameras out there. He got reelected multiple times just off name recognition because people are comfortable with the name that's always been on the ballot. So let's just stick with the status quo here. So newly elected representatives, if you want to really make sure you're representing your people, you have to get out there. You have to have town halls. You have to go to public events. You have to be seen without the camera. You have to be constantly engaging folks, learning and talking to them and finding out what issues are near and dear to their heart. What are the kitchen table issues that the family in this part of the district is dealing with? My district specifically is very different. Each county has its pluses and minuses about what they need. PG County, very urban. St. Mary's County, very rural. They love their rural character. They love, the farmlands and having, lots of land and things like that. They love that. They don't want to be, have a lot of industry come down there and then they face overcrowding, like the things that are going on in Charles County right now, where, the growth has, just escalated. And then there's not a lot of infrastructure to support all the growth. Like I said, each county here has its own issues. And the only way you find out about the challenges that people are going through is getting out there and talking to them. You have to be accessible. So you should be having town halls. You should be, if you have legislation that's going on in Congress, you should be having virtual teleconferences or in-person town halls, letting people know this is the things that we're working on. This is how the legislation is going to represent you or affect you if it's passed. Right now I'm leaning towards voting for it. I've laid out everything to you. Do you agree, disagree? Like, let people be a part of the process. And once people feel engaged and are interacting with it and they're getting feedback from their congressman, the congressman needs to get feedback from them and take that back. We're supposed to be representing our people. So that means we take their voices back. We don't take our own voice and we don't vote how we feel. We vote based off the majority in our districts and how they feel and what they want us to advocate for. And I think when people begin to actually see Congress do that on a large scale, consistently, I feel like the issues where I don't feel like I'm represented will begin to fade. But right now, people are being shunned all over the country. And the only people that our representatives are listening to are lobbyists and their big dollar donors. So that's how we begin to change. We need to fix gerrymandering, get money out of politics, and be more engaged in ourselves and actually be out in the communities that we serve.
All right. Thank you for that, Terry, and the rest of the candidates. So, Sianka, did the candidates answer your question?
Absolutely, especially Terry Jackson. And I don't want candidates to be afraid of their surroundings, be afraid of their neighbors, and I think that's going way too much now. And me, I'm originally from Long Island, Hempstead. I live in North Carolina. So I see it a lot where we have constituents who are running and they don't go out to these other areas, these other troubling areas, because they're scared. I mean, let's just be for real. They're scared. Some people never been in the projects. Some people never been in rundown areas and they already have maybe robbed or whatever like that. We know whatever reason that is. But that's why we need y'all to go out there and to talk to us and because we're tired of being used as Vegas. I hate to use Vegas as an example where they have us as tokens just to get in office. That's it. And then you have, especially our young Black men and young Black women, and I'm putting them out there for a reason. It's because they don't want to vote because they think their vote doesn't matter. And I'm really tired of it. I'm 45 years old, and I get on my children's case to vote. And so they need to see it. They tired of hearing it. They need to see it. They need to see that who are they voting for care about them. Who they voting for care about their communities, care about their education, not just being talking points, because we're actually being used as lottery tickets. We are. And me and my generation, I didn't think I would be in this situation where I'm speaking up, but it has to be said. It can't be tiptoed around. And I'm noticing that a lot. not with you guys, but in politics all over. They tiptoe around it. They put their toe in it. Okay, I already talked about it. That's it. No, it has to be more than that. But thank you for your answers. And you can drop me, Jazz, because I'll talk low. I'll talk to the part. The pear tree would come out. I would talk. The part just come out the pear tree. I would just
No
talk.
problem. I
So-
appreciate your input, Bianca. No problem at
Can I just jump in
all.
and say one thing?
Okay.
Go ahead.
To be really honest, for somebody like me, especially running in a rural district, it's so easy not to have that conversation unless somebody makes me have that conversation. So thank you for asking and pushing, because without you deciding to speak up, it just doesn't happen. And so it really has a force multiplier effect. It does a lot more than you're ever going to see, because when I have that conversation, when I hear other people having that conversation, when I hear your questions, that tells me what to talk about next time, what to ask next time, and it makes a difference you're never going to see. It happens behind closed doors, but that ripples through and affects what we do and we talk about it. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Colin. And I know we did a town hall together, and just by talking to you, you being a white man, me being a black woman, we have so many things in common, like, what cartoons we watch, what foods we like, things of that nature. We have so many things in common than just the skin tone, just, the complexion. It's getting really tiring now, And yes, Terry Jackson, I'm in Fayetteville. I'm like Fayetteville and Rayford. I'm in the outside of Rayford, but in Fayetteville, kind of. But yes, thank you guys. You all keep fighting for us, and we're going to continue to support. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jazz.
Thank you, Sianka. All right, so this is a good segue into talking about getting involved and being more front-facing as candidates for it. That way voters can see what you're doing and who you are and how you're contributing to your constituents. But particularly, I want to talk about, since we're in the last quarter of this roundtable discussion, I want to talk about what recently happened in the month of January, and particularly yesterday, regarding the special election. So there was a special election that happened in Iowa where a state Senate seat flipped from red to blue, which was an upset. And we had a few other special elections that have flipped in places like Georgia and other states. But particularly yesterday, there were a few. There was a state Senate seat District 9 in the Fort Worth area. That was a plus 22 for the Republicans in 2024, but it just flipped to Democrats yesterday. So congratulations to Democrat Taylor Ramett for flipping that seat for the Texas State Senate seat. And also there was a special election for a U.S. House seat. I think it was Texas 18. Democrat Christian Menifee won that special election. That seat has been vacant for a while due to the governor holding that seat for almost a year, being empty. So I just want to know from those who are on the panel, do you feel like with these upsets in these state Senate seats and these special elections, whether if it's on a state or federal level, do you feel like the voter sentiment is shifting? Primarily, you've been seeing more shifts with the suburban and the working class votes. So can you all touch on that for me? I'll go to Shavonne first.
Yes, I think the foundation of the change, if that's how we're gonna navigate it, is around the amount of harm that has been felt by people in those areas. And I do think there is I think there's an increase in desire or curiosity to engage in politics, but I cannot confidently say there is an increase in turnout, because there is a flow of just life in politics in general. So you'll turn really red, and then you'll get a little purple, and then you'll get blue again, and then you'll turn really, what I mean? It is not unusual that this is the response, but I think that we can leverage it to being more engaged with figuring out why people have made the transition, and then bring more people into the transition in our respective districts. So.
Okay, Randi?
So I want to agree. We want to make sure people turn out, get them registered to vote. We want to make sure they actually show up or put their mail in the ballot. But everything that we've seen is a good reason to be optimistic about what's to come, especially if you look at what happened in Virginia. And I know some people are used to how blue Virginia has been over the last, 15 so years. But Virginia, I remember going to college in Virginia and seeing it switch from bright red to like getting Tim Kaine as governor. So I was able to see how it gradually went from red to pink to a little bit back and then to purple and blue. There are some big, I knocked doors in 2024 in sundown towns. So like Virginia is red. And to see the House of Delegates in Virginia get a super majority, I want everyone to pay attention to the messaging, because the messaging is important for the buy-in. Like, yeah, people are tired of it. People are tired of this stuff. And it has hit everyone, because in the past, everyone thought it would just hit people that look like me or people that are Hispanic or anything like that. But it's hit everyone, all the bad stuff. But the energy that was in Virginia, I can tell you, it was all about, and it's the same stuff that we've doing with ours. It's all of us for all of us. A lot of people get angry psychologically. This is what people are angry and mad because they don't feel a part of a community. That's why they throw out, oh, well, you're doing identity politics and all this other stuff, because they don't feel like they have an identity. So it doesn't mean that that's an excuse for the way that they act, but playing on that and playing on their emotions. If you see my stuff, I may say, hey, you're rightfully angry. Let's just point it in the right direction, sort of thing, so that people are taught. And I think more voter education, taking the time to speak to people on a everyday level, like kind of keep that good energy, like everyday level, can bring them out so they understand. Like, I don't use the word economy, I talk about cost of living. It's the same thing, right? But people don't pay attention when they hear economy. They think that's a business, they think that's something above them, but it's their everyday lives. So I think that it's a lot of great stuff, because not only did they flip it from plus 17 or whatever, it's now plus 14 Dem. And someone had predicted that all the redistricting in Texas would backfire on Republicans. So it just might. The numbers might be there for that. And I think in every district you have a reason to say this is going to move. And that's how I feel about our district, even though it's red, it's Maryland red. Even though it's red, it's Maryland red, and the numbers are there to make a living. You just got to make people know what you're talking about and get them going, get them excited on a normal level.
All right, Justin?
Yeah, look, I think this administration likes to talk a lot about the mandate they have because they won in 2024. And I think they've greatly overplayed their hand. The mandate was for affordability. The mandate was under the banner of Make America Great. And they've done things that, and advocated and lobbied for things that really don't have America's interest in hand. Often they're corporate interests or selfish interests of the administration. And I think the American people are seeing that clearly. Obviously, we've already talked about the violence in, immigration enforcement. But I think when we look at issues like Venezuela, Greenland, many of our international partners just feeling completely unable to work with us in any good faith effort, and choosing to go elsewhere and work with countries that they've, maybe in the past not worked with. And I think that discrediting of who we are and our standing in the world, it's starting to get through, whether it's getting through to individuals who have a more global, lens, and that's how they're seeing things. And maybe they're very politically engaged and they're seeing, the discrediting of America on the international stage, or whether they're just seeing, the reality that Trump's been in for a year, and cost of living has not changed. It's remained the same or got worse for me. And those realities are going to have an impact when people go in the voting booth. And I think we're seeing that across the country. I also think we're seeing really good organizations who have put a lot of time and energy into candidate selection and also working with those candidates and resourcing those candidates. The member you referenced of Texas as a Run for Something candidate. I was endorsed by Run for Something. Actually, I had no real desire to run for county commissioner, but Run for Something cold called me and asked me to consider that run. And I did. And honestly, the only way I got elected was through their resources. And I think people are starting to understand their vote matters. I think they see the impact of it. Certainly here locally, when I won my election, on the night of the election, I was ahead by 42 votes in a county that's 300,000 people. And I ended up winning by 184 votes after all the provisional votes were cast, which is like the narrowest of margins possible. Every single vote counted. And I think more and more people feel that way, especially at the local level. I know when we get into presidential politics, we have the realities of, does my vote really count if I'm in a state that, all the electoral college goes, no matter what. But either way, I think people are more engaged because they feel like they feel helpless. They don't feel like they have a voice, and they're beginning to understand that, their vote can have some effect. And in the end, when we come to this administration, like that, we can't jog home because we're seeing these numbers though. And that's, I think, the imperative that we have to have is that, if we feel like, oh, wow, these numbers are really good, like we're kind of rounding third and like, oh, we're just going to get home easy, we can kind of jog. No, we got to put the work in. We got to knock the doors. We've got to give it every single ounce of effort that we have to get across the finish line. But it's certainly encouraging to see a lot of these special elections, even special elections that are losses. Like I think of the Afton-Bain race and how close that was when it had no business being close at all, Right. So.
All right, Max.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing now is kind of just an amplified version of the usual swing that you get between election cycles, amplified by a particularly toxic rendition of the Republican Party and current administration. And the important part, kind of as Justin was saying, is making sure that, with this momentum that has been unfortunately kind of handed to us in the midst of tragedy and chaos, and do something, put in the work in, and ultimately, after putting the work in to get in 2026, doing enough for the people to truly prove that we are worth staying in and doing more good.
Okay, Colin?
Yeah, I think Texas Senate 9 is R plus 17 was one number I saw, and my district is R plus 16, so we are real focused on those numbers. I'm real happy about them. But I absolutely agree with Justin. You can't walk this off. This is going to take a lot of work still. This just tells us that it's possible, which it wasn't last time, and it may not be next time. This is a unique opportunity, and we've got to capitalize on it. And what I keep telling my team is we've already won because we've made a difference such that they'll never see this as safe as they did before. Whether we win the seat or not, we make the district more competitive, and we've got to run with that in mind because that's what really makes a difference in the long run. Those numbers are fantastic. And, I talk to people all over the state, and I keep hearing mostly anecdotes because nobody's paying to poll a state like this. And so I hear stories about, well, I'm not seeing as many Trump bumper stickers as I used to. People aren't showing up to their meetings as much as they used to. We're seeing more people show up to the Dem meetings. What I've noticed is I'm driving 1,200 miles this weekend all across Kansas, and all kinds of, you pass like a farm, and there's been a shipping container out front painted with, Trump Pence. Well, it's rusty now, and nobody's replacing it, and nobody's repainting it. That was enthusiasm once upon a time, and there's no enthusiasm behind it anymore. It's just somebody kind of stubbornly sticking out what their team allegiance is, and they don't feel like renewing it because they can't sell their soybeans, and they know whose fault that is. And that's somebody who can reach, that's somebody who can flip. And every person who flipped like that is 1 point away from that, 1 point more for us. But more importantly, it's somebody who in the future looks at Democrats and thinks, here's a neighbor. Here's somebody who's got an idea I can listen to and not an enemy. And that's the real goal here, not just going to Congress.
All right, absolutely. Terry?
Seeing the results of these special elections across the country gives me hope, but yet I'm going to be level-headed and remain cautiously optimistic. Because American politics can change on a dime overnight, it seems. People know who Donald Trump is. We've known since he came down the escalator in 2015, for those of us who have stayed current on him or whatever through his life. And all he does is verify and validate that every day. But I think people are finally beginning to see the Republican Party itself, though, for what it actually is and what it represents, and the lengths that it's willing to go through to drive its agenda forward, that conservative agenda that they've been working on since they put Reagan in office back in the 80s. With the Heritage Foundation and everything, all their right-wing antics that they're doing and their extremism on their policies, it's finally beginning to see. And it took someone like Trump, who is a symptom in all of this. It took someone like him who doesn't care, his narcissistic tendencies and everything that he has. It took that to actually bring it out and to bring all the Republicanism, everything that they were preaching behind closed doors. When they brought that to the light now, the vast majority of Americans, don't like it. And that doesn't represent what America actually is. I mean, you have a small third, maybe a quarter to a third of the country who gets behind that type of ideology. But for the most part, the American people overall have rejected it. And I feel like our issue is we tend to get complacent or we get disengaged. And most of the disengagement comes from single issue voters, those who have one single issue. And if the Democratic Party doesn't align, or if a specific candidate doesn't align to that one issue, and I'll throw it out there, I'll throw out Palestine and Israel, right? Something like that. And people tend to disengage. A lot of people don't look at the big picture of politics, right? You can be a one issue voter. You can have something that's important to you, but at the same time, you have to look at the party in its totality when you vote. And I think that, as long as the Democratic Party keeps working on messaging and they actually listen to their voters, they're showing up to town halls, they're engaging, they're being out there and being vocal and have a unified message, I think we'll continue to see these upsets in these deep Republican districts where if we don't win, we do like we did in Tennessee, where we, bring the vote down and make it a close race. 8-9 points in a Republican district that was won by like 20 plus points is a big deal. And I think we tend to downplay that in some instances when we should be talking that up a lot, and putting that out there that, we are gaining ground because people are waking up and they understand what Republicans actually stand for, because the Republicans have stood 10 toes down for the most part on everything that Donald Trump is doing, everything that was proposed in 2025. There has been little to no pushback. And the pushback there has been is because people have stood up. You've seen the images on social media when Republicans would go and have their town halls. They were getting eaten alive by their constituents, because they were angry, because they actually see, well, yeah, you've been talking about this, but now that we actually see how it's playing out, we don't like it and we don't stand for it. So I feel like as long as we do that, we'll continue to do this. And I'm optimistic, that will continue to go. And I have high hopes for the midterms. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so we do have someone on the panel from the chat. Buttermilk, did you have a question for the candidates or anything you want to add to the conversation? Are you on mute?
I'm on mute. I said I have talked to all of these lovely people. So I'm super, super excited. I really came up to just let you all know, when the 120th class of Congress gets sworn in, y'all will see my face there. Look for me, because I'm going to say, hey, I helped all of them get there. I'm going to take claim for it, okay? And just like I said, y'all keep trying to do what you do. If I saw Miss Randi taking notes, I hope you all were taking notes. Get little tidbits from each other that you may not have thought about, that you may not know may possibly work. It may work for you. So this is why I truly enjoyed it. We do this so that you all can already, like I said, we can already be putting the plan together and going into this Congress with our heads straight and on the same page. With that being said, I did end up having a question. I just came up here to say hello to everyone and tell y'all all thank you for being here. But I end up having a question. One of the things I hear from the other side right now is that we do not have a leader. So my question to you all in response to Jazz's question, how important is that? Should we be pinpointing someone now of who we want to be our front runner for presidency? Is it important that we have a leader? Because as someone mentioned earlier, we not only have to, or as I was talking to someone earlier, that that's the one thing Republicans have. They are concise on what their message is, and they all sticking to it, right or wrong. And because we are the big tent that lets everybody come in, it's harder for us to have one concise message because we're representing so many different people. So is it important, again, that we have a leader specified for who we're behind for 2028?
Terry, you can go, and then I'll bring Randy in next. Terry.
So, speaking as a Navy veteran who drove ships for part of his career, I think us not having a leader is kind of like a rudderless ship being out at sea. It's just going to drift wherever the waves take it, wherever the current takes it, right? So, yes, we do need a leader, but we need the right leader. We need a bold, decisive 20th century leader, someone who is current, that understands the real challenges that we're facing right now. Obviously, I'm not an ageist or anything like that, but right now our Congress is the boomer generation, right? They are outdated and ill-equipped to move this country forward into the future. You know, you feel how you feel about who you elect to office in whatever district you live in across the country, but once you get to a certain point in your life, then you shouldn't be advocating for a future that you're not going to be around for, because you are stuck in your thought process, your ideals. You're thinking about what it was back then, and we're trying to think about what it's going to be tomorrow. And we need leaders there. And there is potential in the Democratic Party, but I feel like the issue for the Democratic Party is going to be a consensus about who they want there. Do they want someone who's going to just toe the party line, or do they want someone who's going to be bold and decisive and, you know, take those risks that everybody has been unwilling to do? And I'll give you a quick example about that. You can take something as simple as Social Security, right? All we need to do to make Social Security solvent for the next 75 plus years is just remove the cap, remove that 6.2% cap off salaries of $176,000 or more, and Social Security solves itself. But right now, we don't have bold leadership in Congress that's willing to advocate for that. You know, something as simple as that, we could solve this tomorrow in Congress. But until we get leaders there that are willing to stand up and actually fight for the American people and not listening to the millionaires and billionaires whispering in their ears saying, no, we don't want to pay more. We don't want to pay more payroll taxes, right? It's just something as simple as that. Leaders of tomorrow, and there are some in the Democratic Party who are strong contenders. And I'll say Jasmine Crockett, AOC, you know, some of those folks, I'd be willing to put them up for a vote, because, you know, they understand the process, they understand how it works moving forward. And I'm pretty sure the 120th Congress will have new leaders that once they get inundated with how Congress works and have a little experience under their belt, they'll step up. But right now, look at everyone we have in leadership positions. Chuck Schumer in the Senate, Hakeem Jeffries. You know, Schumer, you know, has been in Congress forever. Hakeem Jeffries, his loyalties are questionable at best, you know, with his APAC ties and his corporate PAC money ties and everything else. So we need leaders there who are free and clear, who are not obligated to serve anybody else except the American people. So yeah,
you feel the same way about Cory Booker?
Cory Booker as well. He's great at political grandstanding, but when it comes time to actually take the action, you know, he flakes. He flakes out. And we need people there who are really going to move this country forward. And yes, to answer your question overall, we definitely need leaders, but we need leaders with the right vision that are going to move us in the right direction and keep us focused as a party, keep the caucus together, and move us forward 100%.
All right, Randy?
All right, I'm going to take a different direction. And hey, Mama, I remember you from ours. Go, Maryland. And you and me.
I was about to say, all my Marylands, y'all doing me proud up here. Thank you. Go, Maryland.
So I'm going to take a different route. We shouldn't even be talking about 2028 right now. We got to get our asses together for 2026. We don't win this like veto-proof majority in the House and the Senate, we're screwed no matter what for 2028. So whether it's Bashir, whomever, it doesn't matter, because we need to move forward. We need to everybody dig in very, very tight suck up some of that BS that we've been on for the last 10 years, where we can't vote for this person if they're not perfect, and that person and this, and just fucking win. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We need to win, and we need to focus on 2026, because that's right now. I think all of the stuff, because everybody has their thing, and I saw someone say that the U.S. isn't going to vote for a woman. They're going to have to. We're going to have to vote for a woman at some point, because we're the only people that can get it done, it seems like. Two, I'm not in the point where I think that older people should be just not useful, right? We have term limits. That's called voting. Those are elections. If you don't knock people out, because I know members of the CBC that are in the office, somebody like a Bobby Scott, like a Maxine Waters, et cetera, because guess where they are when they're not in DC? They are in their hoods. They are helping the people. Not only those types of conversations, I think, get a little caught up in rhetoric, where we're talking about who this and that. Because even with Cory Booker and people complain about pharmaceuticals, who brings in money for the workers? Who works really hard? There are people working for pharmaceutical companies in New Jersey, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter. That's where they're getting money. Like, we have poultry is really big in Maryland's first district, and they're doing some really they really need to stand their own in the cleanup and environmental stuff. But people get really nice checks from them. So you don't say, hey, y'all suck, totally, because we have to support where people are getting their money and their benefits and everything else when it comes to that. But I really think what we all need to do is show up and be leaders for our districts, be leaders for the people. Show up and stop platforming racists, Gavin Newsom. I don't care if you think that we should all do this. This is a big tent, and anything that asks us not to be a big tent is a non-starter. We need to protect the people, because if no one protects our people, the LGBTQ plus, the Black people, the indigenous people, who is going to protect them? That's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on 2026 before we get into 2028. So I love that question, and I love that I get riled up about it, because I think we're focused in the wrong places, and we need to get our houses in order. The people that are in charge right now are doing whatever they can with are they making some questionable stuff here and there? Sometimes, but I think that the heart is still in the right place, and they will move on into the next realm and everything else. But our focus is to give them a veto-proof majority. Whomever is going to lead, whatever, let's move on and let's do it. Because I think a lot of the new people also have they think about transparency, and that means that you need to tell everything. Transparency, that kind of transparency can get people in a lot of trouble. So you got to learn how to be strategic, right? Or as George W. Bush would say, strategery, like work on that strategery. So, all right. But I love you. Thank you for your question.
Okay. We're going to go to Max, then Shavonne.
Yeah. The way I'm kind of going to talk about it, I guess, is from, like, a strategic perspective, a very in-the-now perspective, because, like, philosophically, right, I kind of hate the idea of, like, individual leaders in politics in that way. It's supposed to be a collaborative body where people's ideas come together and you work out what's the best thing to do for the people. Shouldn't really be subject to one person's vision or will or whatever have you. It shouldn't be up to everyone to toe that line. But in the way that politics unfortunately works, I think it is important to have a cohesive vision and a leader, and we do need to find one. We need to find one who, very much as Terry was saying, is bold and ambitious and ready to meet the moment and do things that are worthy of consideration and voters' praise. Things that will coalesce the party from something that is kind of viewed as, well, frankly, pretty stagnant into something that's really viewed as a real engine for progress for the American people. As far as that goes, I think we need to definitely be careful about who we choose as a leader. We need to make sure it's someone who really, we need to read the room about it. It needs to be someone who matches kind of the will of the American public. I know something that just came to mind because, shoot, I was reading about it earlier today, is a big point of contention with both independent and actually like left-wing voters was the issue of Palestine and Gaza and stuff, with with Kamala Harris. That's something that is very near universally, in my experience, like across the board, something that regular citizens detest because it's, well, I can't say that word, but it starts with a G, and there's absolutely no quarter taken for civilians or women or children or people starving. And people rightly detest that regime, and when they see a candidate who will not like directly go against or strongly condemn or say that they won't cooperate or stop supporting that regime, it drove a huge amount of even left-wing voters away in that election, and that is a problem. We can't choose our leader and have it be someone who is deeply morally compromised in the eyes of the average American.
Okay, Justin?
Yeah, so I might say something controversial, but I guess I want to emphasize different types of leadership. First and foremost, I would say the presidency is, as Randi stated, something we should not be really actively processing right now. We should stay engaged on who the candidates are and try to learn as much as we can about their track records, especially those of us who are engaged in, in our own party, trying to, learn about different candidates. But when it comes to like, I'm running for as a congressman, so like in that case, leadership there, I'll speak specifically. I've been asked point blank at multiple town halls, would I support Hakeem Jeffries? And look, I don't know Hakeem Jeffries. I've never met the man before. I've never seen what his leadership ability is like in a closed room. And I do think there's something really important here about leadership that I think is critical to this conversation. Oppositional leadership really is critical on messaging. And this is something that AOC is very good at. If we would have had AOC as our leader over the last year, the messaging would have been so much better. Or Jasmine Crockett, or I could think of a number of people who would have been so much better at the messaging and the quick one-liners and the ability to call into question what Trump is doing. Hakeem Jeffries does not have that skill. I don't know him personally, but I can just tell from just the reality of seeing him at a podium, seeing him take questions, right? But if we are in charge, leadership requires a very different skill: consensus building, vision casting, determining what the priorities of an agenda are that we can actually get across the finish line. And obviously, the president will have the power of the veto. What particularly can we get across the line and force him to put his signature on vetoing and make that their party's, veto, their party vetoed this. So I only say that to say, I think if we're in charge, the leadership required is very different than necessarily just talking point leadership or someone who can be that oppositional leader that maybe looks like a leader publicly. Like I think of Nancy Pelosi. I don't necessarily think she was the greatest communicator I've seen, but she was really good at consensus building and really good at vision and really good at prioritizing, agendas. And so I just say that to say, obviously each of those people have their, warts in their closet. I'm day one. I would sponsor a bill to ban stock trading, and many of them trade stocks. And there's a lot of moral issues with many of the people. But I do think it's important that we differentiate oppositional leadership versus consensus building leadership, because whatever position we're in, come after the elections in 2026, we need to ensure we put the right leader in place depending upon the style of leadership needed for that moment.
I'm sorry, Shavonne. I messed up the order. I know you're supposed to go next, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Just save the best for last. No,
hello, friend.
I only say that because she's going to be my representative, so I'm already trying to get kudo points. Okay, so
you have all the kudo points. You have all the kudo points. Thanks for asking the great question. Because the way I've thought about this over the years is, I think in general the Democratic Party struggles with succession planning, right? Like we've kind of been having the same conversation since Obama. Right. And then we had the same challenge during the last election. Right. We didn't really have any clear path forward. And then secondary to that, there is a value to institutional knowledge, just because having the ability to build coalitions and have those committee seats does directly impact how influential you can be once elected, right? And third to that, Randi hit that nail on the head in terms of 2028 is until we can remedy our strategic oversight, 2028 is going to be the same thing that we encountered during the last election, right? And this particular election in 2026, this is like the highest number of congressional seats that have been open in like recent history. So if there was any attempt to really design what coalition building looks like within the 120th Congress, if there was any attempt at redesigning the ideological structure of where we could go, because we know that policy takes forever, and a House of Reps seat is 2 years, and a Senate seat is 6 years. So if there is going to be any measurable impact of progress, the strategy needs to be one of those really beautifully designed strategic plans for 30 years of like, what are like from a reactive and a proactive state, right? And that cannot come from one person. That has to be done by a large group of people who have the insight and who know what the impact of these policies will be. So that is my vision. So I guess in a very cute, wrapped up way, I don't particularly think we need a leader. I think that we need solid, like-minded individuals who have the strategic oversight to know when a consultant is wrong, right? Because a lot of times we get caught up in these positions because consultants are guiding the strategy of a lot of these individuals, right? So knowing when the consultant is wrong and knowing when the consultant is right is something that we really would have to balance out to understand strategy. And then I'll close it out with saying, and I think we've spoken about it on the panel, but I think it's really important to know that if you're 21 years old, Donald Trump is all you know, right? That is all you know from a political standpoint in terms of, I can win by being vile, I can win by being mean, I can win by being cruel, I can win by being unkind, right? So if we have the opportunity to redesign what political success looks like as grassroots candidates, as the people who are in the field, meeting with our constituents, doing these town halls, collaborating with leaders like DIaz, who have been able to cultivate this space where we can reach people in our district, while we're still fundraising, while we're still doing house parties, let me not say house party, living room politics, while we're still doing all of these things, right? That is the next wave. Like, we can no longer afford to put all of our eggs into one basket. Like, we have lost the benefit of that. And if we think about it, we're currently at a zeitgeist where we're currently living through a zeitgeist, a period of time where the old-fashioned way of navigating coalition building and success will no longer work. So as a group of people who are taking this chance to go out there and be embarrassed, have the same conversation multiple times, really get to the meat of what our constituents want and need, that has to be factored in as well. So we have to be mindful that if everyone on this call wins, right? If everyone on this call wins, we are that new breath of what policy could look like for the next 20, 30, 40 years, right? And to close it out, obviously, I can't remember what I can't remember what the correct term is for TikTok, is obviously that's a hot point, but we also don't have honest conversations about what a solution will look like. That has been a state that has been in existence since the 40s, right? They have received billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure. So placing the expectations on congressional representatives or senators to undo presidential or executive oversight, we have to be very honest about what a solution will look like for people. And we saw with Kamala, there were a lot of uncommitted voters. Zoran was an uncommitted voter. He was very clear in not supporting her, right? There were a lot of people in Congress, sitting congressional members, who were also against her. And now we are being forced to contend with that fragmentation within the Democratic Party. So if we're going to think about strategic oversight and what it looks like for this year, the next few years, we have to be very, very, very honest about how we got here from both sides of the aisle, right? So if we're talking about the Republicans and their erosion of public safety and justice and accountability, we also have to talk about the insider conflicts that have also led us to be required to have these conversations, right? So that is why I say I don't think we need a singular leader. I think that we need a coalition amongst the party, whether it's partisan or nonpartisan or bipartisan, excuse me. But we also need to call out bad faith actors who leverage the short news cycle in order to say something to get an inflammatory point that benefits their end game, but harms us in the long run. So those are my little 2 cents, but I thank y'all for joining.
All right, thank you for that. But was there anything else you wanted to add?
Nope. I just, as I always, I wish you all luck. Well, we got this. I also agree. I don't think that we necessarily need to have a pick at this moment. That is not our focus. I try to keep in mind that the other side that is saying this sees a 34-time convicted felon as their leader. And then so they think everyone else should think like that too. So I think we are just perfectly fine. We are doing what we need to do, which is we're gonna hit them. We're gonna sneak up from behind and take over the House and the Senate. I'm claiming it. We taking over the House and the Senate, and we're gonna boot all their butts out of here. And then what? Then who's your leader then? So yes, I 100% agree that we do not necessarily need to focus on that right now. I just wonder what y'all thought on that. But thank you all. Y'all have a good night. It was such a pleasure.
I love your enthusiasm.
I love these round tables.
All right. Thank you, Buttermilk.
Jan.
All right. So this has been a great conversation. I know we ran over time, but I don't care because this was great. It was very engaging. I appreciate everyone's input. But just to close it out, I just want you all to continue to get the message out. I thoroughly think that the messaging of affordability and just putting politics to reality to people has definitely made an impact. But with that being said, as we close out, I want to go one by one just to let everybody get their last thoughts in and let everybody know how they can follow you all. And if they would like to contribute to your campaign, feel free to do that. So I'll start with Shavonne.
Here. So thanks again so much for the opportunity. I'm very grateful to be in the fellowship of so many brilliant people and to have such wonderful people ask us questions. I really appreciate that because it helps us get our platform out there and it shows how we're beholden to the people that would put us in office. My Instagram is Shavonne _Congress, and my TikTok is the same, I believe. I don't want to lie, but I think it's the same, or maybe it's FOR. I don't tweet as much. I'm going to work on that, I promise, in the new year. But if the desire is to donate even $3, and I know I've said this before, I donated $3.33 for Donna Edwards because that's all I had. I probably had $27 in there, but she got 3 of them. So, I think people get a little intimidated by the concept of donating because of how oversaturated the donation landscape is. But Obama won his election with 200,000 people giving him $25 a month, right? So it is not always about the amount, it's just the support, and it really helps us be able to speak to voters more. We can purchase literature, we can purchase ads. So, and if you ever just want to hop out, my email address is there, my link tree. And if you're in Maryland, my campaign kickoff is February 21st. I had to move it because of the weather. It was a little tricky out there, and I want to be respectful. I don't want to be that person who can't read the room, right? We've all experienced that. So thank you again so much. I'm headed to the Wizards and Kings game because Russ Westbrook is playing, and I told you guys I love basketball. So I hope everyone has a great night and is staying safe and warm and has a fantastic week ahead of y'all.
Good luck, Ms. Shavonne. Thank you for being here. All right, I'll go with Justin.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I've done multiple of these now, and they've all been incredibly well run, and an opportunity to hear from other individuals in other states and what they're dealing with and the similarities and the differences. It's been very helpful for me, even as I've continued to kind of rethink my platform and hear from many different people. So thank you for offering this and the access it gives to those on this platform to learn about candidates. Please give me a follow on TikTok, but certainly it's the same handle on Instagram as well. We're very active on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. Less active on X, but we're there occasionally. The way you can learn about my campaign is justindouglas.us. We have a lot of information there. If you're in the 10th district or not, you can volunteer. And if you are in the 10th district, May 19th is the primary. I have a contested primary, so I would really love for you to turn out and vote for me. And if you want to contact the campaign, we have a contact us form on there, and we get back to everyone who contacts us. So please let us know what your questions are, or what your concerns are, or I'm an open book. I tell people where I stand on everything. So please reach out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, Randi.
All right, thank you so much for inviting me to this, and I could actually come. Shavonne, I want to be like you when I grow up. So poised, and I'm just me. So running.
You're fantastic. No negative self-talk. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll stay away from that. But I love being here with other candidates. Justin, you too. My campaign manager is from up your way too. And Max, it was great to hear from you down south. Y'all, if you want to know more, it's Randi4MD.com. That's Randi with an I, FORMD.com. So we have our platform from our listening events that have happened in the fall. We have actually a data. If you click on the district, there's a bunch of data there to show you against Andy Harris how much we can win, because without Trump on the ticket, people don't show up for him. We also have our kitchen table conversations coming up throughout the whole month. It's Black History Month, so they got to listen to the Black woman, right? The whole month. And if you're on the other side of Maryland, come see us in Baltimore County at the end of the month. And we have multiple ones happening in Hartford County. We have 3,500 square miles to travel up and down every single week. So it's a lot. It's a lot that we go through. Please, if you feel like you have something to donate, you can do so at the website there. The donate link is there. Tell your story. Contact us if you want to volunteer, write some postcards or something. I would love it. All of my handles are Randi4MD.com. And if you can hear it, I'm a single mom. So they've been quiet for 2 hours. They've had enough. So Randi4MD.com, Randi with an I, FORMD. Thank you.
Thank you, Randi. Max?
Hey, yeah, thanks again for having me on. This is the second one I've been on, and it's been a blast each time. So always happy to be here. You can find more about my campaign at maxdiazforcongress.com. You know, you can see I'm on TikTok here. It's Max Diaz for Congress SC. I'm on all the major socials, and they all have some variation of that handle on there. I'm pretty reachable. Just email me. And like Justin, I have a contested primary. So if anyone's watching from South Carolina District 1, it's June 9th. And if there's a runoff, it's June 23rd.
All right, and did Justin, Randi, and Shavonne, did y'all announce your primaries as well? The upcoming primaries for Maryland and Kansas?
I didn't. I'm sorry. It's June 23rd. I am running against an incumbent. His name is Glenn Ivey. So it is a obviously very contested race, but we are trying our best. So yes.
Okay. And yes, Randi, June 23rd as well. Yes.
Same primary.
All right, and Justin, when is your primary?
My primary is May 19th.
Okay. All right. And I know that Terry and Colin had to leave early, so I want to thank them again. I don't want to leave them out. But before you all go, I do want to send a couple of invites to you all. So I want to invite you all to our next town hall. We will be having candidate Otis F. Bagaru. He is running for Texas State Representative for the 135th District. So, and also I think it's on Tuesday as well, we'll have Julian Abodian running for U.S. Senate for South Dakota. And on that Tuesday as well, it's a doubleheader. We'll be having Mara Flores. And Mara Flores' town hall on that Tuesday will be our 100th town hall. So hopefully you all can stop by on Tuesday as well. Let me go back. So with Otis of Bagaru, that will be tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Tuesday, we have Julian Boudion and Mara Flores. Mara Flores will be our 100th town hall. So we will have a big special celebration on that Tuesday. So hopefully you all can stop by just to speak and just show some love and appreciation to us. Because our team, you know, even though you see people like me moderating and people in the back end hosting and running the live streams. We also have a great group of people who are a point of context when it comes to emailing you all back and forth. And also we have a team, we have people who do our research, people who answer our TikTok messages. So all of that work does not go unnoticed for you all. And I want to give a special shout out to the OVC team when it comes to just managing our YouTube channel whenever we upload the end of the town halls and our special live streams we do, like the roundtables. They do not go unnoticed. So shout out to the team because we do a great work. So with that being said, I also want to mention our next roundtable will be February 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be on the lookout for that. And we have a creators caucus that consists of creators on TikTok being on the panel just like you all candidates, having political discussions as well. So hopefully you all can stop by for that on March the 7th. So with that being said, everyone, I want to give a special shout out to the candidates that were here today. It's been a great engaging conversation. Thank the people on the chat, keeping the conversation going, giving their opinions. And more importantly, thank you OVC for hosting this platform. So for those who are not familiar again, our mantra with OVC is we are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life, empowering voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure that every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, and accountability and action, we're building a stronger democracy. So with one informed vote at a time, please join us because your vote is your power. So until then, see you next time, and you all have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye.
Bye.